In this GED video, I am going to go over some sample test questions in which you can't use a calculator. There are 6 questions in this video I am going to go over. Now on the GED math test, there are only 5 questions in which you can't use a calculator. So let's look at question 1. It says solve the inequality for A. If you need to guess on a question like this, that's fine. This takes some time. But remember when you guess to always guess with the same letter when you're doing multiple choice. So just pick one letter that you like. Let's say it's C. If you like that letter, then when you guess on multiple choice questions, guess C every time. Or if your favorite letter is A, then when you guess on multiple choice questions, guess with A every time. That's a great test-taking strategy. So let's jump in to this problem. We need to solve this inequality for A. And this here means greater than or equal to. And you really don't need to know that to solve this inequality. And another thing, I'm going to put in my time sign here. It's not showing. So the first thing I want to do in my mind is put up a Weiss wall here. That will help me remember that the 2 is on the left-hand side of the inequality, and all this other stuff here is on the right-hand side of the inequality. Now the first thing I'm going to do is reposition this negative sign. I'm just going to move it down with the 3. Remember, with a fraction, you can position the negative sign wherever you want. It doesn't change anything. And what I'm thinking here is I have this fraction with a negative 3 on the bottom. I want to get rid of the negative 3, so I will multiply by negative 3. And remember, what you do to one side of the inequality, you have to do to the other side, so I need to multiply this side by negative 3 as well. Now I have a negative 3 on the top, a negative 3 on the bottom. I'm multiplying, so these drop off. And on the left-hand side, I will multiply 2 times negative 3. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. And then bring down your negative sign. Now the next thing I need to do is bring down my inequality symbol. But be careful here. There is a very important rule with inequalities. Whenever you multiply or divide both sides of the inequality by a negative number, you need to reverse the direction of this inequality. So based on what I just said, I will reverse the direction of this because I multiplied both sides of the inequality by a negative number. Now, if I had multiplied both sides of the inequality by a positive number, then I would not need to reverse the direction of this. Now the next step is to bring down your 2, bring down your time sign, and bring down this quantity 6 plus 3a. Now here's what I'm thinking. This whole quantity 6 plus 3a is multiplied by 2. To undo multiplication, you divide. So I will divide both sides by 2. The right-hand side and the left-hand side. The 2's drop off. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And I bring down the negative sign. I bring down my inequality. I did not switch the direction of this. Again, I'm going to say this again because it's so important. You only reverse the direction of the inequality when you multiply by a negative number or divide by a negative number. I did not do that here. I divided by a positive number, so I kept this in the same direction. Now I bring down the 6 plus 3a. I no longer need to show these parentheses because these 2's dropped off. Now the next step is to move the 6 over with the 3. Because the 6 doesn't have a letter next to it, neither does the 3, so they are like terms. So I need to make this 6 go to 0. So I'll just subtract 6. What I do to one side of the inequality, I need to do to the other, so I'll subtract 6 over here as well. These drop off. 6 minus 6 is 0. And negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9. If this confuses you, just think of temperature. If it's 3 below 0 and it goes down 6 degrees, it's 9 below 0. Now I need to bring down my inequality symbol. Do you think I need to reverse the direction of this? No, the only time you need to reverse the direction of this symbol is when you multiply or divide by a negative number. And we didn't do that here. You will never reverse the direction of the inequality when you're adding or subtracting from both sides of the inequality. So just bring this down. Bring down your 3a. Now let's continue solving this. The a is multiplied by 3. To undo multiplication by 3, I divide by 3. What I do to one side, I do to the other. These 3's drop off. And negative 9 divided by 3, well, let's think this through. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And I'll just bring down my negative sign. Do I need to reverse the direction of this inequality? No, I didn't divide by a negative. I divided by a positive. So keep this in the same direction. And bring down your a. Now I've solved for a. I know my answer needs to have a negative 3 in it. So let's go back to our answer choices and eliminate C and D, because they don't have a negative 3 in the answer choice. Now it's down to A or B. If you need to guess at this point, you have a better chance of guessing. Now in my remaining answer choices, the A is on the left-hand side of the inequality. But when I solve for A here, my A is on the right-hand side of the inequality. There's two ways to deal with this. Here's one way. You can read this inequality backwards from right to left. And if you do that, it would be A is greater than or equal to negative 3, which matches up with B. Because B says the same thing if you read it from left to right. It says A is greater than or equal to negative 3. Now, if that didn't make sense, what you can do is the following. I'll rewrite this piece up here. You can put the A on the left-hand side, put the negative 3 on the right-hand side, but when you do that, you need to reverse the direction of this. And now you can see that this matches up with answer choice B. Question 2. Which number, when placed in the box, will make the equation true? This is the equation. And this means what number squared equals the square root of 36. Don't let your mind fool you here. A lot of students, when they look at this, are thinking the following. They're thinking, what number squared equals 36? That's not what this is asking. These are different because this has a square root symbol over the 36. So watch how I approach this. I'm going to rewrite this equation as follows. What number squared equals the square root of 36? But I'm going to simplify this piece over here. Do you remember what the square root of 36 is? Well, this means what number multiplied by itself gives you 36. And that's 6. Because 6 times 6 is 36. So instead of putting a square root of 36 here, I'll just simplify this, say to myself the square root of 36 is 6. So I rewrote this like this. Now I'm going to cross this out so it doesn't confuse me and just look at this piece. Let's now look at answer choice A. Let's put a 3 into the box. Is 3 squared equal 6? Careful here. This does not mean 3 times 2. Remember, this is an exponent. Exponents mean repeated multiplication. It means to take my base of 3 and write it 2 times, and then to multiply. So when I do that, I get 3 times 3, which is 9, and 9 does not equal 6. So A is gone. Let's try B. Put in a 6 here into the box. Does 6 squared equal 6? No. 6 squared means 6 multiplied by itself 2 times. And 6 times 6 is 36. And 36 does not equal 6. So B is gone. Now you're down to 2 answer choices. If you need to guess, go ahead. But let's go ahead and plug in C. So I'm going to put the square root of 6 into the box. So let's simplify this. Whenever you have a square and a square root, they cancel each other out. And what's left is the 6. So I'll just bring the 6 down. And 6 equals 6. So my answer is C. Question number 3. Which expression below represents the distance from x to y on the number line? So I want to know which one of these expressions here represent the distance from x to y. In other words, this distance from x to y. Now, whenever I see the word distance, I know a couple things. First of all, my answer will always be positive because we always measure distance in positive units. And another thing I know is that the symbols for distance in mathematics look like this. These symbols indicate distance or absolute value. So I know that my expression has to contain these symbols. And the only 2 expressions that contain these symbols are C and D. So I would eliminate answer choice A and B and then guess either C or D. But let's assume we have plenty of time. And let's go ahead and actually find the distance from x to y. So here's x, here's y, and I'll just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the distance from x to y is 7 units. So whichever expression gives me 7 units after I simplify it will be my answer. Let's start with A. A says -4 plus 3. Well, that's -1. If you're not sure, just use your number line. Start at -4, and then addition means move to the right 3 units. So I'll start at -4, and I'll move to the right 3 units. 1, 2, 3. Well, that's -1. That doesn't match up with 7. Let's go to B. -4 minus 3. That equals -7. If you're not sure, use your number line. This means start at -4, move left 3 units. Subtraction means to move left. So let's start at -4 right here. I'll move to the left 3 units. 1, 2, 3. That's -7. So that doesn't match up with 7 because this is positive. This is negative, and I know distance always comes out positive, so B's gone. Let's go to answer choice C. The way you read this is the absolute value of -4 plus 3. Now here's how you evaluate this expression. And remember the goal here. Once we evaluate the expression, we need to get out a 7 because that's the actual distance. So let's see if that happens here. I'll bring over my absolute value symbols. I'll evaluate -4 plus 3. Well, we have already done that. -4 plus 3 is -1. So I'll put a -1 here. I know C can't be my answer now because when I evaluate the expression, I need to get out a 7. There's no way I can get a 7 from the absolute value of -1. So I cross out C and D is my answer and I move on. But let me explain to you what the absolute value of -1 is. It's just 1. The absolute value takes the number inside and turns it to a positive. So it's 1. Let's just go ahead and finish this up. The absolute value of -4 minus 3, well, I'll bring these symbols over. And I'll evaluate -4 minus 3. -4 minus 3, we've already done that. That's -7. And again, the absolute value of -7 equals 7 because the absolute value always turns the number to a positive, and that matches up with the actual distance. So our answer has to be D. Now a quick note before I go to the next problem with absolute values. Again, if you had the absolute value of -7, as I said, it's 7. But let's say you were asked to find the absolute value of 7. It would still stay 7. The output will always be positive. Question 4. Which expression is undefined in the set of real numbers? Undefined means that if you punch something into a calculator, you will get out an error message. So let me give you some examples of undefined expressions. This is undefined. You cannot divide by 0. If you punch this into a calculator, 2 divided by 0, you will get out an error message on the calculator. And you cannot take the square root of negative numbers. In other words, if you had something like this, you can't have a negative number inside the square root. In other words, if I were to punch this into the calculator, I would get out an error message. Now these expressions are not undefined. I'll just say these are okay. You won't get an error message with these. If this is flipped around, if you had 0 divided by 2, it's okay if you have a 0 in the numerator or on top. Or if you have a negative on the outside of the square root, this is okay too. This is not undefined. And the square root of positive numbers is perfectly okay as well. So based on this, which expression is undefined? What do you think? Well, A is undefined because there is a negative sign inside the square root. And anytime you have a negative sign inside the square root, it makes the expression undefined. Question 5. Which values of x make the expression undefined? This is an expression. These are my values of x. The problem like this, remember, no zeros in the bottom. I'll make up an expression. How about negative 3x minus 5 divided by 0? This is undefined because there's a 0 in the bottom. So I am just going to focus on the bottom part of this expression. I'm not even worried about the top part. So, if the bottom part, x times x minus 4 equals 0, the expression is undefined. So I just need to solve this. There is a fancy property in mathematics called the zero product property. It basically says if you have two or more factors on one side of the equation and on the other side of the equation you have a 0, you can set each factor equal to 0. Now factors are things multiplied together. Let me explain. This is one factor, so I could set this equal to 0. I will write that down. And I can set the other factor equal to 0. This is the other factor, x minus 4. So I will set x minus 4 equal to 0. Well, now I'm getting somewhere. What this is telling us is that if x equals 0, the expression is undefined. And these are my values for x, so I know my answer choice has to contain a 0. A says x equals 4 and x equals 6. No 0 here, so A is gone. B is okay. It says x equals 0 and x equals 4, so it has a 0. Anything that has an x equals 0, I need to keep. I need to keep C as well. D I need to get rid of. There's no x equals 0 here. So now I'm down to two choices. Again, you can guess if you need to at this point. Now let's go over to this side and just solve this for x. Well, we're subtracting 4 from x here, so to undo subtraction, I will do addition. I will add 4 to both sides. This drops off to 0. Bring down your x. And 0 plus 4 is 4. So when x equals 4, the expression is undefined. And the 4 shows up here. So B has to be my answer. I can get rid of C. So in summary, when x equals 0 and x equals 4, the expression is undefined. Question 6. Multiply these numbers and round your answer to the nearest hundredth. You definitely want to ballpark this one. It will save you so much time. Now let's think about this. 2.1, I can tack a 0 onto this. It doesn't change anything. In other words, 2.10, if this is money, it would be $2.10, which is really close to $2. So just drop this piece off right here and make this a 2. So I'll do that right here. I'll drop this off, and this is just 2. And now our problem is basically 3.25 times 2. Well, if I save $3.25 every day for 2 days, I will have $6.50. And this estimate is closest to answer choice C, 6.83. And that's my answer. Well, thanks for watching and have a super great day.